To my step-granddaughter Maya, I leave $1. The laughter that erupted around the mahogany table was sharp and cruel. Maya Thompson sat frozen in her seat, her dark skin burning with humiliation as the white faces of her stepfamily twisted with amusement. Victoria Harrington, Ilias's biological granddaughter, covered her mouth in mock surprise, her diamond rings catching the afternoon light. The attorney, Graham Pierce, continued reading the will, listing millions in assets now belonging to Victoria and her siblings. Maya heard none of it. Her ears rang with the echoes of that laughter, the same laughter she had endured her entire life in this family. The housekeeper's daughter, the charity case, the stain on the Harrington legacy. With trembling fingers, she accepted the single coin from the attorney's hand. It was a commemorative dollar with her step-grandfather's initials engraved along the edge. E.H. Elias Harrington, the man who had married her grandmother, who had welcomed Maya into his home as a child, who had spent hours teaching her about sustainable architecture, the man she had believed, foolishly it seemed, had loved her. "That's it," she whispered. Graham Pierce met her eyes with an expression she couldn't read. "For now," he murmured, so softly only she could hear. But Maya was already walking past the smirking faces and out into the cold afternoon air. 3 days later, the fluorescent lights of Magnolia Diner cast harsh shadows across Maya's face as she refilled coffee cups with mechanical precision. The breakfast rush meant tips, and tips meant a fighting chance at next week's custody hearing. Her children, Jalen and Destiny, were spending the weekend with their father Marcus, a court-mandated arrangement that gave her only 2 weekends a month with them. The dollar coin sat in her apron pocket, a persistent reminder of her grandfather's final rejection. She had considered throwing it away a dozen times, but something stopped her. Perhaps it was stubbornness, or the memory of the man who had once made her feel like she belonged. Her phone vibrated. Graham Pierce. What could Elias's attorney possibly want? She answered, in the alley behind the diner. "Miss Thompson," Graham's voice was urgent, "your inheritance is incomplete. I need to show you something. This cannot wait another day." Maya almost laughed. She had a custody hearing tomorrow, bills piling up, and a double shift to finish. But something in Graham's tone made her hesitate. The courthouse loomed before her the next morning, its stone columns projecting an authority that made Maya's stomach tighten with dread. She had worn her best outfit, a navy blue dress from a thrift store that she had carefully pressed the night before. Across the aisle, Marcus sat confidently in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his attorney leaning over to whisper something that made him nod with satisfaction. The hearing proceeded exactly as Maya had feared. The judge reviewed financial disclosures, stability assessments, and the court-appointed evaluator's report. Marcus provided health insurance, private school tuition, a 4-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood. Maya worked variable shifts, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment where the children shared a room while she slept on the sofa bed. The math was simple and devastating. After careful consideration, Judge Klein announced, "I am granting primary physical custody to Mr. Coleman. Ms. Thompson will have visitation every other weekend and 1 evening dinner visit per week." The words hit Maya like physical blows. Primary custody to Marcus. She would see her children only 6 days a month. She wanted to protest, to explain that love couldn't be measured in square footage, that stability wasn't just about money. But the gavel came down with finality, and Marcus was already gathering his papers with barely concealed triumph. Outside the courthouse, rain had begun to fall. Maya stood on the steps, numb and hollow, watching the gray sky weep. She had failed her children, failed herself, failed to be enough in a world that measured worth in dollars and addresses. The coin in her pocket pressed against her thigh. A cruel joke from a dead man. A sleek black sedan pulled to the curb, and Graham Pierce emerged with an umbrella. "Miss Thompson," he said, extending it to cover her. "I heard about the ruling. I'm truly sorry, but what I'm about to show you could change everything, especially for Jalen and Destiny." Maya looked at him through the rain, exhausted and skeptical. She had no reason to trust this man, no reason to believe that anything could salvage the ruins of this day. But she had nothing left to lose. They drove for nearly an hour, leaving the city behind as urban sprawl gave way to suburbs, then to rolling countryside. Graham spoke little, allowing Maya to sit in silence with her grief. When she finally asked where they were going, he simply said Hawthorne County and offered nothing more. The car climbed into the hills, the road winding through dense forest until they crested a ridge overlooking a valley below. "Before we go further," Graham said, turning to face her, "I need to see the coin." Maya hesitated, then withdrew the dollar from her pocket. She had carried it with her to the hearing, though she couldn't explain why. Graham examined it carefully, turning it to catch the light on the engraved initials. Then nodded with something like satisfaction. "Your step-grandfather was a visionary," he said, "and much more sentimental than people realized. Did you know he kept every letter you wrote him as a child? He was particularly fond of the one where you designed a perfect community for your school project. You were 10, I believe." Maya felt her throat tighten. She remembered that project. She had spent an entire weekend with Elias at the library, researching sustainable architecture and renewable energy. He had treated her ideas with respect, had helped her build a model out of cardboard and pipe cleaners. It was one of her happiest memories. "He never forgot that day," Graham continued. "Or your design. Look down there." Maya leaned forward, gazing into the valley below. At first she saw only forest and a glinting ribbon of river. Then she noticed small structures scattered among the trees, connected by winding paths. Solar panels glinted on rooftops. A larger building stood near what appeared to be a small dam on the river. "What is that?" she asked. "That is Hawthorne Haven," Graham replied. "Your inheritance." As they descended into the valley, Maya's mind raced with questions she couldn't yet form into words. A gate appeared before them, simple wrought iron with Hawthorne Haven arched across the top. Graham stopped the car, rolled down his window, and pressed the dollar coin into a circular indentation beside a keypad. The gate swung open silently. "The coin is the key," he explained. Quite literally, beyond the gate, the road opened onto a circular clearing with a fountain at its center. Around the perimeter stood a community center and several smaller buildings. People were visible, working in garden plots, walking along paths, carrying supplies between structures. As Graham parked, Maya noticed something strange. The residents had stopped what they were doing and were gathering, looking toward the car not with suspicion but with anticipation. Many of them, she realized, were black. Some elderly, some young. All watching her with expressions of welcome she had never seen from the Harrington family. "They've been waiting for you," Graham said. For quite some time, a woman in her early 60s approached, her silver locks pulled back in a practical style, her dark, weathered face breaking into a warm smile. "Maya Thompson," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Miriam Clay. Welcome home." Maya followed Miriam through Hawthorne Haven in a state of bewildered wonder. The community sprawled across the valley floor in a carefully planned arrangement that felt both organic and intentional. 60 microhomes nestled among the trees, each around 400 square feet. Beautifully crafted with sustainable materials, solar panels supplemented the hydroelectric power from the dam. Community gardens flourished in the afternoon sunshine, tended by residents who paused their work to smile and wave as Maya passed. "Each resident contributes according to their skills," Miriam explained as they walked. "I was a combat medic for 20 years, so I oversee our medical needs now. Others teach, farm, build, or maintain our systems. Most of us came here broken in some way. Elias found us when the world had given up on us, and he gave us a purpose." Maya noticed that the community was remarkably diverse. Though predominantly black, she saw elderly veterans tending vegetable patches, young mothers watching children play on handmade playground equipment, a man in his 30s using forearm crutches who moved with purpose and confidence despite his mobility challenges. He introduced himself as Jonah Reyes, a retired Army Corps of Engineers officer who maintained the micro-hydroelectric dam and power grid. They approached the community center, a 2-story building with wide windows and a broad porch. Inside, Maya found a large common room with a kitchen, dining area, and comfortable seating. Bookshelves lined one wall, and a bulletin board displayed community announcements and duty rosters. The second floor, Miriam explained, contained classrooms, a small medical station, and a communication center with satellite internet and emergency radio systems. Graham had been waiting in the community center with a sealed envelope in his hands. "Perhaps this will help you understand," he said, offering it to Maya. "Your step-grandfather left this for you, to be opened only when you arrived here." With trembling fingers, Maya broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was familiar, the same script that had signed birthday cards and occasional letters during her childhood. She read it slowly, each word sinking into her consciousness like stones dropped into still water. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, then Graham has fulfilled his promise to bring you to Hawthorne Haven. The dollar coin that seems so insignificant is actually the key to my true legacy, and now yours. Years ago, you showed me your vision for a perfect community, sustainable, cooperative, and in harmony with nature. While others dismissed it as a child's fantasy, I saw the wisdom in it. Over the last 15 years, I've been quietly building that vision into reality. Hawthorne Haven is home to 60 micro-homes, a community center, workshops, gardens, and a hydroelectric dam that provides clean power. More importantly, it's home to a community of extraordinary people who share your vision, though they don't yet know it was originally yours. I've left the bulk of my fortune to Victoria and the others because they value only money. But to you, my true heir and spirit, I leave something far more preciouser, living legacy, and the means to expand it. The Hawthorne Haven Trust owns this land and provides for its basic operations. As trustee, you will have both the responsibility and the resources to guide its future. Why the secrecy? I've learned that true character reveals itself when people believe there is nothing to be gained. Your step-cousins would have pretended to share my vision if they knew what awaited. You alone have the heart to steward this community as it deserves. My legacy awaits my true heir. That has always been you, Maya. With love and faith. Grandfather Elias. Maya lowered the letter, tears streaming down her face. Around her, the community members who had gathered watched with expressions of patient understanding. They had all been where she was now, overwhelmed by an unexpected gift of belonging. There's more, Graham said gently. The trust includes a significant stipend for the trustee, $15,000 monthly, plus healthcare coverage and educational funds for your children. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. $15,000 a month. With that income, she could provide everything the court had deemed necessary for Jalen and Destiny: stable housing, education, healthcare. She could petition for a custody review immediately. The trustee residence was a cabin slightly larger than the micro-homes, with a bedroom, office, kitchen, and comfortable living area. Large windows overlooked the community and the valley beyond. Maya wandered through the space in a daze, touching furniture her grandfather had used, studying photographs on the desk, one of herself as a child sitting on Elias's lap, another of the valley before development began. Using the satellite phone in the communications center, she called Marcus to check on the children. His voice was suspicious when she explained where she was, and he made a pointed comment about her grandfather's theatrical stunt at the will reading. Maya hung up before he could diminish her joy further, but not before telling him that she would be filing for a custody review, based on changed circumstances. The first weekend visitation came 2 weeks later. Marcus drove Jalen and Destiny to Hawthorne Haven with obvious reluctance, his eyes scanning the property with barely concealed calculation. Destiny tumbled out of the car with characteristic energy, her braids bouncing as she raced toward Maya. Jalen emerged more slowly, 13 years old and increasingly conscious of his dignity, but his eyes widened as he took in the solar panels, the gardens, the community members who had gathered to welcome them. The day unfolded better than Maya had dared to hope. Destiny made instant friends with the community children and appointed herself assistant gardener to an elderly man named Hector. Jalen's initial skepticism melted when Jonah showed him the dam control station and the drone monitoring system. By evening, both children were begging to stay longer, and Maya felt a warmth spreading through her chest that she hadn't experienced in years. But the peace could not last. 3 days after the children's visit, Maya's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was ice cold and immediately familiar. Victoria Harrington had finally discovered what her grandfather had really left to the housekeeper's granddaughter. "I'll make this simple," Victoria said. $5 million, cash, for Hawthorne Haven. You can take your children anywhere. Start fresh. Never worry about money again. Maya's grip tightened on the phone. "The property isn't for sale." Victoria laughed, a sound without warmth. "Don't be naive. That land sits on significant mineral deposits. My company needs those resources. You're a waitress playing at being important. This is your chance to walk away with more money than you could earn in 10 lifetimes." Maya thought about Miriam, about Jonah, about the 60 families who had built their lives here. She thought about her grandfather's letter, about the vision she had drawn as a 10-year-old girl, about the first place she had ever truly felt at home. "The answer is no," she said. Victoria's voice hardened. "Then you've made a very powerful enemy, Maya. And I always get what I want." The threats began subtly. Unfamiliar vehicles appeared on the roads near Hawthorne Haven. Survey teams from Victoria's company, Harrington Minerals, were caught trespassing on the property boundaries. Graham filed complaints, but the local authorities seemed reluctant to act against a Harrington. Then came the discovery that Maya's ex-husband Marcus had been meeting with Victoria's representatives. Whatever they had promised him, he had agreed to testify against Maya in the upcoming custody review, claiming that Hawthorne Haven was an unstable environment for children. Maya worked through the nights with Graham. building their legal case while simultaneously learning the operations of the trust. She discovered that the property held not just the surface community, but valuable lithium deposits beneath worth an estimated $50 million. She also found documentation her grandfather had compiled over decades. Evidence of Harrington minerals, environmental violations on adjacent properties, internal memos about illegal waste disposal, and testimony from whistleblowers who had been silenced or paid off. Elias had been building more than a community. He had been building a weapon against the family that had never accepted Maya, against the corporation that was slowly poisoning the surrounding watershed. The question was whether Maya had the courage to use it. The attack came during a summer storm. Heavy rain swelled the river, and the dam's automatic spillway should have opened to release the pressure. Instead, the system failed. Jonah discovered that someone had physically blocked the control mechanism. Deliberate sabotage designed to look like mechanical failure. Maya and Jonah fought through the driving rain to the emergency release system, struggling to open manual floodgates while water levels rose dangerously behind the dam. They succeeded in preventing catastrophic failure, but not before the western embankment began to erode. Maya broadcast an emergency evacuation order over the community radio, then spent the next hours helping residents reach higher ground. She waded through chest-deep floodwater to rescue a family trapped in one of the lower homes, carrying a terrified 8-year-old girl named Keisha on her back through the current. The water was cold and fast, threatening to sweep them both away with every step. But Maya pushed forward with a strength she didn't know she possessed. When dawn broke, the damage was extensive. A dozen homes had been flooded, gardens were destroyed, and a section of the orchard was underwater. But there were no casualties, a miracle that Maya attributed to the community's preparation and mutual support. As residents gathered on the ridge overlooking the devastation, Miriam put her arm around Maya's shoulders. "You saved us," she said quietly. "When it mattered most, you didn't run. You led." Maya shook her head, too exhausted to accept praise. But somewhere deep inside her, something had shifted. She had proven to herself most of all that she belonged here. Drone footage captured by Jonah showed vehicles with Harrington Minerals logos leaving the property via a back road, time-stamped just before the spillway failure was discovered. Additional footage showed men in company uniforms examining the spillway mechanism 2 days earlier, and one of them appeared to be spraying something on the control arms, likely a corrosive agent designed to cause the mechanical failure. Graham arrived with EPA officials to document the sabotage. "We have evidence," he reported. "Video footage, photographs, the blocked mechanism itself. But Victoria's lawyers are already claiming it was an accident, that the footage is inconclusive. Without more proof, it becomes our word against hers." The next blow came 2 days later. Maya returned to her cabin to find it ransacked. Every drawer had been emptied, every document scattered. The laptop containing their compiled evidence was gone. When she tried to reach Graham, she learned that his office had also been broken into. The backup files, the whistleblower testimonies, the decades of documentation Elias had gathered, all of it had been stolen. Maya sat in the ruins of her cabin, surrounded by scattered papers and broken belongings, feeling the weight of defeat pressing down on her. Victoria had won. Without the evidence, they had nothing but accusations that no one would believe. A black woman claiming that one of the state's most powerful white families had committed crimes. The story was as old as America itself, and the ending was always the same. Miriam found her there an hour later, still sitting among the debris. The older woman didn't offer false comfort or empty reassurances. She simply sat down beside Maya and took her hand. "I've been where you are," Miriam said quietly. "After my last deployment, after everything I'd seen and done, I thought I was finished, broken beyond repair. But Elias found me, and he told me something I've never forgotten. He said that the deepest roots grow in the hardest soil, that the trees that survive the storm are the ones that bend without breaking." Maya looked at her, eyes red from crying. "What if I'm not strong enough?" Miriam squeezed her hand. "You carried a child through a flood on your back. You stood up to a billionaire who's never heard the word no. You're stronger than you know, Maya. The question isn't whether you can fight, it's whether you're willing to." Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The coin has more secrets. Your grandfather was smarter than they knew. Check the dam control station." Beneath the main panel, prepared for everything. Maya stared at the message, her exhausted mind struggling to process it. It could be a trap. Victoria's people could be waiting for her. But the initials EH and the phrasing stirred something in her memory. Her grandfather had always said that the best secrets were hidden in plain sight. She found Jonah at the control station, running system diagnostics after the flood. When she showed him the message, he frowned and began examining the main control panel. It took them 20 minutes to find a small coin-shaped indentation beneath. A service plate that no one had thought to check. Maya inserted the dollar, and a section of floor shifted to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was a fireproof safe, secured with another coin-shaped lock. Maya's hands shook as she opened it. The contents made her gasp. A USB drive containing encrypted copies of everything that had been stolen, the environmental evidence, the whistleblower testimonies, the internal memos, a leather portfolio holding treasury bonds dated 1944, their face value $20 million, and a handwritten letter from her grandfather, dated just 2 months before his death. My dear Maya, if you're reading this, then they came for you, as I knew they would. Victoria and her kind cannot abide losing, and they have no scruples about how they win. But I spent 30 years preparing for this moment. The evidence on this drive is enough to destroy Harrington Minerals and send Victoria to prison. The bonds are your insurance worth approximately $160 million at current valuation. Enough to rebuild the community 100 times over and fight any legal battle they throw at you. Use these weapons wisely. But remember that the true inheritance I left you is not money or evidence. It is the community itself, and the knowledge that you are always worthy of love, even when my family refused to see it. I am proud of you, Maya. I always was. Grandfather Elias. Maya read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Jonah let out a low whistle as he scrolled through the USB drive's contents. This is everything, he said. Environmental violations going back decades, bribes to local officials, and here recordings of Victoria herself discussing the plan to acquire Hawthorne Haven by any means necessary. He looked up at Maya with something like awe. Your grandfather wasn't just collecting evidence. He was building a case that would hold up in federal court. Maya wiped her eyes and squared her shoulders. For the first time since the flood, she felt something other than despair. She had the evidence, she had the resources, and she had a community of extraordinary people standing behind her. Victoria Harrington had made a very powerful enemy, and Maya Thompson was done being silent. The federal agents arrived at Harrington Minerals headquarters on a Tuesday morning, their black SUVs forming a precise line in front of the glass tower that bore Victoria's family name. Maya watched the live news coverage from the community center at Hawthorne Haven, surrounded by residents who had gathered to witness the moment they had fought so hard to achieve. The evidence on Elias's USB drive had proven more devastating than anyone could have anticipated. Environmental violations spanning 3 decades, bribes to local officials, illegal waste disposal that had contaminated groundwater affecting thousands of families, and recorded conversations in which Victoria herself discussed destroying Hawthorne Haven by any means necessary. Graham had delivered the evidence not just to the EPA, but to the FBI, the Department of Justice, and 3 investigative journalists who had been tracking Harrington Minerals for years. Within 72 hours, the story had exploded across national news. A powerful white heiress caught on tape plotting to destroy a black-led sustainable community. Environmental crimes that had poisoned predominantly black neighborhoods for decades. A dying man's secret plan to bring down the corporation from beyond the grave. The narrative wrote itself, and for once, the ending was not the one Maya had been taught to expect. Victoria was arrested on federal charges including environmental crimes, conspiracy, and racketeering. The footage of her being led from her office in handcuffs, her designer suit rumpled and her face contorted with fury, played on every news channel for days. Her lawyers promised a vigorous defense, but the evidence was overwhelming. Elias had spent 30 years building an airtight case, and his granddaughter had delivered the final blow. The treasury bonds added another layer to the story. $160 million hidden for decades, now funding not just the rebuilding of Hawthorne Haven but the establishment of a national foundation dedicated to sustainable community development. The Elias Harrington Legacy Fund would help create similar communities across the country, prioritizing families who had been displaced by environmental injustice. Maya's face appeared on magazine covers. Her story held up as an example of perseverance against impossible odds. But the victory that mattered most to Maya came in a quiet courtroom 3 weeks after Victoria's arrest. The custody hearing had been rescheduled at Graham's request, and this time, everything was different. Maya arrived not as a desperate waitress fighting for scraps of time with her children, but as a community leader with stable housing, substantial income, and a support network that any judge would recognize as exceptional. Marcus sat across the aisle, But he was no longer the confident adversary who had once dismissed her dreams as worthless. His collaboration with Victoria had been exposed in the evidence dump, and he faced his own legal troubles for his role in the conspiracy. More importantly, Jalen and Destiny had learned about their father's betrayal. The children who had once been caught between two parents now understood clearly which one had fought for them and which one had tried to use them as leverage. The judge reviewed the changed circumstances with careful attention: the trustee position, the monthly stipend, the educational opportunities at Hawthorne Haven, the community of responsible adults who had rallied around Maya and her children. She noted Marcus's legal difficulties and his demonstrated willingness to prioritize financial gain over his children's welfare. She also acknowledged something that previous hearings had ignored: the strength of character Maya had shown in building a new life against impossible odds, the resilience that would serve as a model for her children as they grew. When she announced her decision, granting Maya primary custody with Marcus receiving supervised visitation pending resolution of his legal issues, Maya felt something break open inside her chest. The courtroom seemed to dissolve around her, leaving only the words that had rewritten her future: primary custody, her children, home with her, where they belonged. Jalen and Destiny rushed into her arms the moment court adjourned. They held each other in the hallway, crying and laughing simultaneously, a family reunited after months of forced separation. Graham stood nearby with tears in his own eyes, and Maya knew that somewhere, Elias was watching with satisfaction. The inheritance had never been about money. It had been about proving that Maya was worthy of love, of trust, of a legacy that would outlast them all. The move to Hawthorne Haven happened gradually over the following weeks. Jalen claimed a room in the expanded trustee cabin, immediately filling it with engineering books and drone equipment that Jonah helped him select. Destiny appointed herself official ambassador to new community members, greeting each arrival with a tour that highlighted her favorite spots: the butterfly garden, the treehouse library, the kitchen where Hector let her help bake bread on Saturday mornings. Maya found her rhythm as trustee, learning to balance administrative duties with the hands-on work she had come to love. She spent mornings in the garden, afternoons reviewing trust documents with Graham, and evenings gathered with her children and the community for shared meals and conversation. The weight she had carried for so long, the constant fear of failure, the voice that whispered she would never be enough, began to lift. In its place grew something she had almost forgotten how to feel: peace. The dedication ceremony for the rebuilt homes took place on a warm autumn afternoon. The community gathered in the central meadow, surrounded by the micro-homes that had been restored and improved after the flood. New solar panels gleamed on every roof. The dam had been upgraded with redundant safety systems, and at the entrance to Hawthorne Haven, a new sign had been installed, carved from reclaimed wood by community craftsmen. Maya stood before her neighbors, her children beside her, the dollar coin hanging on a chain around her neck. She thought about her grandfather, about the decades he had spent preparing for this moment, about the faith he had placed in a girl everyone else had overlooked. She thought about Miriam and Jonah and all the others who had welcomed her, when she had nothing to offer but her willingness to learn. She thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago, broken and desperate, and the woman she had become. True wealth, she said, her voice carrying across the gathering, is not measured in dollars or property or the things we own. It is measured in the people who stand beside us, in the community we build together, in the legacy we leave for those who come after. My grandfather understood that. He built this place not as an escape from the world, but as a model for what the world could become. And now it is our responsibility to carry that vision forward. The applause that followed was warm and genuine. But Maya barely heard it. Her eyes had found Jalen and Destiny in the crowd, watching her with expressions of pride she had never seen before. They were home. They were safe. They were together. And for the first time in her life, Maya Thompson knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. The dollar coin caught the afternoon light as she stepped down from the podium, its engraved initials glinting like a promise kept. A single dollar had unlocked everything, not because of what it was worth, but because of what it represented: faith, legacy, the unshakable belief that one person, given the chance, could change everything. Maya looked out at the community her grandfather had built, at the children playing in the meadow, at the future stretching before her like an open road. She had been given $1 and turned it into a kingdom, not of wealth, but of belonging.